Tremors of War, Voric Voss, Part 2, The Obsidian Anchor. The torches were beginning to sputter, their oily smoke clinging to the ceiling of the ancient hall like a shroud. They had been underground for hours, picking through the skeletal remains of a civilization that had clearly preferred silence to company. Nothing but dust and disappointment, Valerius groaned, his voice echoing off the damp walls. He kicked at a pile of shattered pottery. The great artifact is probably a decorative chamber pot. We've combed every corridor in this rot hole twice. Kellar leaned against a pillar, his breath hitching in the stale air. The Elders' maps are as old as the dirt they're printed on. Maybe there never was anything here. Just a tomb for the sake of being a tomb. Voric didn't join in. He stood at the edge of the torchlight, his head tilted. The vibration he had felt in the mud outside hadn't stopped. It had intensified. It wasn't a sound, but a rhythmic pressure behind his eyes, a low-frequency thrum that seemed to sync with the beating of his own heart. He followed the tremor through a narrow archway hidden behind a fallen tapestry. The squad followed him with half-hearted grumbles, more out of a lack of better options than actual hope. The room was different. It wasn't a grand hall or a treasury. It was a small, circular chamber made of dense, seamless obsidian. In the center sat a sarcophagus, its lid a massive slab of gray stone, etched with runes that had long since lost their meaning. Another dead end, Valerius sighed. A sealed tomb. Unless you want to spend the next 3 days chipping away at that lid with a pickaxe, I suggest we head back. Voric walked to the edge of the tomb. The vibration here was so strong, it made the iron plates of his gauntlets rattle against his skin. He didn't look for a lever or a hidden mechanism. He simply dropped his torch, braced his boots against the floor, and pressed his shoulder into the stone lid. Voss, don't be an idiot, Kellar muttered. That thing weighs more than your ego. Voric didn't answer. He let out a low, guttural snarl, his muscles bunching and straining under his tunic. The stone groaned, a deep, ancient sound of protest, and then with a violent, grinding screech, the lid slid back. It crashed to the floor, shattering the obsidian tiles beneath it. The squad crowded around, torches held high. Expecting gold or a glowing relic, they stared down into the dust. Nestled in the center of the sarcophagus was a sword. It was a massive, scarred slab of iron, long and heavy with a hilt wrapped in faded, tattered leather. It looked used, abused even, as if it had been discarded by a god who had grown tired of its weight. Voric reached down. As his fingers closed around the hilt, the tremors stopped instantly. The frantic, invisible pulse that had been hounding him for miles suddenly smoothed out into a steady, heavy resonance. He pulled it from the tomb. To the others, the blade looked like it should require 2 hands and a winch to lift, but Voric brought it up with a terrifying, fluid ease. It felt like an extension of his own arm, just as stubborn, just as heavy, and just as tired. It's just a piece of scrap, Valerius said, his voice unusually quiet. No glow, no spark, just old iron. Voric ran a calloused hand down the flat of the blade. The tremors didn't return, but he could feel the potential of them trapped inside the metal like a coiled spring. The walk back through the winding halls of the temple was slower. The air felt heavier, as if the very stone resented the removal of its centerpiece. Valerius, never one to let a moment of silence last, kept eyeing the slab of iron strapped to Voric's back. Look, Voss, I know you got that whole new recruit energy going, but that thing is going to break your spine before we hit the tree line. Let me take a shift carrying it. Voric didn't stop. No. Come on, don't be hostile, Keller added, reaching out. You've been hauling gear all day. Give it here. Voric stopped and unslung the massive blade. He didn't hand it over. He simply leaned the hilt against a fallen column. Be my guest. Valerius stepped up with a smirk, spitting on his palms. He grabbed the leather-wrapped hilt with both hands, braced his feet, and heaved. His face went from pale to a deep, alarming crimson. The sword didn't budge. It didn't even tilt. It sat against the stone as if it were part of the temple's foundation. Keller tried next, his veteran muscles bulging as he attempted to just slide the tip of the blade an inch across the floor. The metal screeched against the obsidian, but it stayed rooted. It's not just heavy, Keller muttered, stepping back in awe. It's like it's pushing back. It's got a grudge against the air itself. Voric reached out with one hand. His fingers closed around the hilt, and with a grunt that was more of a habit than a struggle, he hoisted the massive slab back onto his shoulder. To him, the weight was there. It was immense, but it was a familiar weight. It was the tremor he had been feeling, now localized into a single, manageable burden. I told you, Voric grunted, turning back toward the exit. It's stubborn.